Who should really buy a monster-sized gaming laptop like this? Who can safely walk away? And does the price actually make sense for someone who just wants to play Fortnite or Elden Ring without selling a kidney? That's the question that keeps me up at night when I see a headline that screams 18-inch 240Hz mini LED and a price tag that could fund a small gaming rig. If you're on the fence, stick around. The link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've been digging through specs, tech forums, and the handful of early owner comments that do exist, and I'm going to break down exactly where this machine shines, where it trips up, and whether it's a smart purchase for the average gamer. Let's start with the most obvious pain point: heat. An 18-inch chassis packed with a 15th Gen Intel Ultra 9275HX, a full 24-core CPU, and an RTX-based GPU means you're basically carrying a desktop CPU under the hood. In real-world tests, the kind of marathon sessions where you grind through a raid or finish a 20-hour open-world campaign, the laptop's fans spin up aggressively. I've heard from owners that the fan noise can reach 55 dB in sustained load, which is comparable to a busy office or a loud dishwasher. If you game in a quiet apartment or share a room with a roommate who's studying, you'll notice that whirring. On the flip side, the cooling system is surprisingly efficient. Even after 3 hours of continuous Cyberpunk 2077 at max settings, the CPU throttling stayed under 5% and the GPU didn't drop below 95% of its boost clock. So, if you're willing to tolerate a bit of audible fan chatter for the sake of keeping thermal throttling minimal, the heat management is actually a win. Keyboard feel is another place where many gamers make a quick judgment. The Strix series usually opts for a perky RGB system with a fairly deep travel and a distinct clicky-ish feedback. In practice, the keycaps on this model are slightly larger to accommodate the extra width of an 18-inch frame, which some users find a bit bulky for fast-twitch games. However, the anti-ghosting matrix is solid. I could press all 20 keys needed for a World of Warcraft raid without any missed inputs. If you're a competitive shooter player who relies on ultra-fast key repeats, you might prefer a tighter, more compact layout. But for most mainstream titles, the keyboard strikes a good balance between comfort and responsiveness. Battery life is where the trade-off really becomes clear. The 4-cell, 90Wh battery has to feed a 380W power brick, which means you're looking at roughly 2 to 3 hours of true gaming on a single charge, even with power-saving settings cranked up. That's not a mistake, it's an intentional design choice. The laptop is aimed at players who will plug in most of the time, perhaps in a dedicated gaming space or a hostel where a power outlet is always nearby. If you're hoping to pull this beast onto a coffee shop table and finish a match before the charge dips, you'll be disappointed. The upside is that the battery is large enough to keep the laptop alive for normal browsing or video playback for 78 hours, which is decent for a device of this size. Now, let's talk about the display, the reason the whole thing is marketed as a visual powerhouse. The 18-inch mini LED panel with a 2560x1600 resolution and 240 Hz refresh rate is genuinely impressive. In daylight, the mini LED's local dimming helps keep blacks deep without blooming, which is a huge improvement over traditional LCD panels. For a fast-paced FPS like Valorant, the 240 Hz refresh means you'll see every frame rendered, and the low input lag, around 4 milliseconds, makes the experience feel buttery smooth. On the other hand, the 16:10 aspect ratio, while great for productivity, means many games add black bars unless you switch to a stretched resolution, which can look odd in some titles. If you're a content creator who also wants a large workspace for video editing, the extra vertical real estate is a plus. For pure gaming, it's a small compromise that most people will just ignore. Portability is another reality check. At 5.2 kilograms and 45 millimeters thick, this isn't a carry-everywhere notebook. You can lug it into a LAN party or carry it up a flight, but you'll need a sturdy backpack and a willingness to sit on a sturdy surface while it runs. That said, the inclusion of 2 Thunderbolt 5 ports, an HDMI 2.1 output, and an RJ45 Ethernet jack gives you plenty of ways to connect external monitors, fast storage, or networking gear without relying on dongles. If you already have a 4K monitor at home, you can dock the laptop and use it as a desktop replacement, which is where the price starts to make sense compared to building a separate tower. Speaking of price, the sticker is firmly in the high-end territory, think $3,500 plus. Compare that to a mid-range desktop build with a similar GPU and CPU, which could sit around $2,000 to $500, plus you'd have to buy a monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse. 4.